Imagine waking up and feeling as though the entire world has lost its light. The colors you once knew, the warm gold of the sun, the calming blue of the sky, even the simple green of leaves on a tree, suddenly feel muted, as if a grey filter has been placed over everything. The laughter of people outside no longer warms you. The music you once loved feels like background noise. Food has no taste. Even your own reflection looks like a stranger. Every step you take feels impossibly heavy. It's as though invisible chains are wrapped around your ankles, dragging you down with every movement. Breathing, something so natural, so automatic, suddenly feels like lifting weights. You inhale, but the air feels thick. You exhale, but the relief never comes. And the cruelest part? You don't even know why. Nothing catastrophic has happened, at least nothing visible to others. The world looks at you and says, "But you have everything. You should be happy." And so you put on a mask, you nod, you force a smile. But deep inside, you know something is broken. This is depression, not sadness, not a bad mood, not just being tired or unmotivated, but a profound emptiness, a hollowing out of your inner world until life itself feels meaningless. Depression is not just an emotion, it is an entire state of existence. And if you've ever lived it, even for a single day, you know exactly what I mean. That's why in this video, we will go deeper. We will not stop at cliches like, just think positive, or try harder. Instead, we'll explore what depression really is, why it happens, what it does to the mind and body, and most importantly, how to begin finding your way out of the fog. And if this resonates with you, if even a small part of what I just said feels like your reality, then I want to invite you to stay until the end, because I promise you, you are not alone. There are explanations, there are reasons, and yes, there are paths forward. Before we begin, take a moment. If you find these kinds of explorations meaningful, if you want to keep discovering the truths that most people are too afraid to talk about, consider subscribing to the channel. Here, you'll find more than surface-level advice. You'll find the hidden layers of psychology, philosophy, and healing that can help you understand not just depression but yourself. Let's begin. Sadness. We all know it, it's part of being human. You lose something important, you get rejected, a dream slips away, or you face a disappointment. Sadness arrives. It hurts, yes, but sadness is honest. It has a reason. It comes, it stays for a while, and then like rain, it eventually clears. Sadness is like a storm. It may be fierce, it may drench you completely, but storms move on. The clouds break, the sun reappears, and slowly you feel lighter again. Sadness respects the natural rhythm of life, but depression is not a storm. It's not even rain. Depression is a fog, thick, heavy, unrelenting. It doesn't rage, it doesn't scream, it simply lingers. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months, and still the fog doesn't lift. That's the first great misunderstanding people have. They think depression is just being sad for too long. They confuse it with grief, with discouragement, with disappointment. But grief and sadness still allow you to feel. You cry, you ache, you mourn, but those emotions are alive. Depression, by contrast, is a deadening, an emotional anesthesia that strips meaning away from everything. Think of something that once brought you joy. Maybe it was music. Remember how you would put on your favorite song, close your eyes and let it wash over you? How the rhythm made you feel alive, how the lyrics spoke directly to your soul. Now imagine playing that same song while depressed. The melody is still there, the lyrics unchanged, but you feel nothing. It's as though the connection between the world and your heart has been severed. Or think about a friend, someone you used to laugh with, someone who made you feel seen. You're still together, still talking, but something is missing. The laughter doesn't reach you anymore. The warmth doesn't penetrate. You're present, but not really. That is depression. Not the storm of sadness, but the absence of meaning itself. And here's the cruel irony. Because the outside world cannot see this distinction, they misunderstand. They tell you, don't be so dramatic. Everyone gets sad, just get over it. They believe depression is a choice, an attitude, a failure of effort. But let me be clear, depression is not sadness stretched out. It is a completely different experience. When you're sad, you still believe in tomorrow. You think this hurts, but it will pass. When you're depressed, tomorrow feels like a copy of today, empty, grey, and unbearable. This is why many people living with depression describe it not as pain, but as numbness. Pain at least reminds you that you are alive. Depression convinces you that you are nothing. The psychologist Andrew Solomon once described depression as the flaw in love. He said, "It is the illness of being unable to feel, the illness of being unable to love." And that is perhaps the most haunting truth. Depression does not only take away joy, it takes away the ability to care. So let's be clear, sadness is natural. Sadness is part of the human condition. Depression, however, is something else. It is not a storm you can wait out. It is a fog that requires understanding, patience, and help to navigate. And before we continue, if you're finding this helpful, if you want to keep uncovering truths that most people never say out loud, I invite you to subscribe, not because of numbers, not because of growth, but because this channel is meant to be a community for people like you, seekers of understanding, of healing, of clarity. And together, we can dive deeper into what really matters. So now that we've separated depression from sadness, let's step into the lived reality of depression, what it does to daily life, how it steals even the simplest joys, and how it creates a cruel cycle of paralysis. Imagine this. Your alarm goes off in the morning. For many people, it's a small annoyance, something to snooze once or twice before getting up. But when you're depressed, that sound isn't just annoying. It feels like an impossible command. Get up, face the day, move. But your body doesn't respond. Your mind whispers, what's the point? The simple act of rising from bed becomes the first battle of the day, and often you lose. For most people, showering is routine. You step in, let the water hit your skin and emerge refreshed. But for someone in the grip of depression, the thought of standing, undressing, turning on the water, and enduring the sensation is unbearable. The energy it requires feels like running a marathon, so you skip it, and then you feel guilty for skipping it. And the guilt makes the fog thicker, replying to a message, answering a phone call, even opening an email. These tiny tasks suddenly weigh tons. You tell yourself you'll do it later, but later never comes. And with each delay, shame grows. The voice inside repeats, you can't even do this, look at you, useless. It is not just tiredness. It is not just procrastination, it is paralysis. Depression drains you before the day even begins. The moment your eyes open, you are already exhausted, and the cruel cycle deepens. The less you do, the worse you feel. The worse you feel, the less you do. It's a trap, one that tightens around you until even the idea of freedom feels impossible. And then comes the isolation. You cancel plans because the idea of being around others feels unbearable. You stop answering calls. Friends drift away not because they don't care, but because they don't understand. They think you don't want them, when in truth you're silently screaming for connection. But you don't know how to reach out anymore, so you sit alone scrolling mindlessly, staring at screens, losing yourself in distractions that don't even entertain you. Hours slip by, days blur together, and all the while, you feel yourself sinking deeper into a void no one else seems to see. How do you explain this to someone? How do you tell them that you feel a weight pressing on your chest even when nothing is wrong? How do you explain that, even surrounded by people, you feel completely alone? This is why so many with depression suffer in silence, because to put it into words often feels impossible. And even if you try, the world's responses often hurt more than they help. Cheer up. Be grateful. Others have it worse. They mean well, but their words sting like salt in an open wound. And so the silence deepens. The mask gets thicker. You nod. You smile faintly. You pretend. And inside, the fog grows. Sigmund Freud once said that depression is like mourning without an object, as though you are grieving something you cannot name. Perhaps it is a lost self, a lost dream, a lost sense of meaning. Whatever it is, the weight never leaves. And yet, in this unbearable heaviness, psychology offers insight. Because the more we understand why this happens, the more we can begin to see depression not as a personal failure, but as a complex condition, one that can be studied, explained, and slowly navigated. In the next section, we'll explore how psychology, from Freud's idea of displaced mourning to Jung's vision of depression as transformation, helps us understand the hidden layers of this condition. But before we continue, if you're still with me, I want to pause for a moment. If these words resonate with you, if you recognize yourself in them, know this: you are not alone. Thousands of others are listening too, quietly nodding, realizing they are not as isolated as they thought. And if you want to continue exploring these truths that many people never dare to say out loud, consider subscribing, not just to follow a channel, but to join a community, a place where we speak openly about what others hide, a place where you are understood. When we talk about depression, it's tempting to look only at modern explanations: brain chemistry, neurotransmitters, diagnoses, and those are important. But long before we had brain scans and antidepressants, the great thinkers of psychology were already trying to understand this mysterious darkness of the soul. Two names stand out: Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung. Freud's view: depression as displaced mourning. Freud, often called the father of psychoanalysis, believed depression was a form of mourning, but not always mourning for a person. Sometimes it is mourning for something we cannot even name. Think about it. When someone you love dies, grief is expected. Society understands. You are given time to cry, to rest, to heal. But what if the loss is not of a person but of a dream? What if you once believed you would live a certain kind of life, a successful career, a loving relationship, a sense of purpose, and reality turned out differently? That loss is invisible, but it is still a loss. Freud believed that in depression, the mind mourns silently. It grieves for the unlived life, the abandoned self, the lost identity. And because the object of mourning is unclear, you cannot explain it to others. Instead, you turn the grief inward. The sadness becomes self-directed, and you begin to see yourself as the failure. This is why so many with depression feel overwhelming guilt, even when they've done nothing wrong. It's as though they are punishing themselves for the loss of something they can't even name. Think of the person who says, "I don't even know why I feel this way. I just feel broken." That is Freud's displaced mourning. It is grief without a clear cause, pain without an obvious wound. Jung's view: depression as a call to transformation. Carl Jung, Freud's one-time student and later rival, saw things differently. Where Freud saw mourning, Jung saw transformation. To Jung, depression wasn't just illness, it was the psyche's desperate cry for change. He believed that when the conscious self ignores something vital, a passion, a truth, a buried desire, the unconscious pushes back. And sometimes it pushes so hard that it drags you down into depression. For Jung, depression was like a messenger. Painful, yes. Dark, yes. But also purposeful. It was the soul's way of saying, something in your life is not aligned. Something needs to change. Imagine living a life designed entirely for others. You take the job your parents wanted. You maintain relationships because society expects them. You silence your true interests, your deeper desires, in order to fit in. On the surface, everything looks fine, but beneath, your inner self is suffocating. And then one day, your mind refuses to cooperate. You wake up and cannot move, you feel heavy, empty, lifeless. That, Jung would say, is not just illness. It is your psyche demanding to be heard. Depression is not only collapse, it is also invitation. As Jung famously said, depression is like a woman in black. If she turns up, don't shoo her away. Invite her in, offer her a seat, and listen to what she has to say. What an extraordinary way to look at it. Not as a curse, not as weakness, but as communication. As if the darkness itself carries a message, one that could transform your life if you dare to listen. Why these perspectives matter today. Now, you might be thinking, that sounds poetic, but what does it mean for me right now? Here's why it matters. Freud's view helps explain the guilt and self-blame, the mourning for something invisible. It helps us see why depression feels like failure when it is not. Jung's view, meanwhile, reminds us that depression might be pointing toward change, that beneath the suffering, there may be meaning waiting to be uncovered. Together, these perspectives shift the question from what's wrong with me to what is my pain trying to tell me, and that shift from shame to curiosity can be the first crack of light in the fog. But psychology is only part of the story. Modern science has gone further, exploring the biology of depression, the chemistry of the brain, and the invisible ways our bodies change when depression takes hold. Before we explore that, let me pause. If you've stayed with me this far, I know this isn't easy to listen to, but maybe it resonates. Maybe it gives you words for something you've been carrying silently. If it does, I'd ask you, subscribe to the channel. Not because of numbers, but because here we go deeper. We refuse to settle for shallow explanations. Together, we uncover truths that most people overlook. And now, let's step into the science, into the brain itself, and see what biology can reveal about depression. So far, we've looked at depression through psychology, Freud's mourning, Jung's transformation. But let's turn inward, not just to the soul, but to the brain itself. Because while depression feels like a fog of thoughts and emotions, it also leaves fingerprints on our biology. And understanding this science is crucial because it destroys one of the most harmful myths. The idea that depression is simply a matter of willpower, the chemistry of emotion. At its core, our moods are influenced by neurotransmitters, tiny chemical messengers in the brain. You've probably heard of some of them: serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine. Serotonin is often called the happiness chemical, but that's too simple. It regulates mood, appetite, sleep, and even how we process pain. Low serotonin doesn't just make you sad, it makes everything feel heavier. Dopamine is about motivation and reward. It's the spark that makes you excited to try something new, the satisfaction you feel when you accomplish a goal. When dopamine levels drop, life feels flat. Even achievements don't feel rewarding. Norepinephrine affects energy, alertness, and focus. When it's low, even concentrating on a single sentence can feel exhausting. In depression, these chemicals are often imbalanced. The brain stops producing or processing them in normal amounts. That's why people with depression often describe feeling numb or empty. It isn't imagination, it's biology. And here's the important part. You cannot simply think your brain into producing these chemicals again. Telling someone with depression to cheer up is like telling someone with diabetes to just make more insulin. It misunderstands the entire nature of the condition, the brain under siege. But it's not just chemistry. Brain imaging studies show that depression can physically alter how different regions of the brain function. The prefrontal cortex, which helps with decision-making and rational thought, slows down. That's why depression makes it so hard to plan, focus, or even imagine a different future. The amygdala, which processes fear and negative emotions, becomes overactive. This is why small problems can feel catastrophic and why guilt and self-blame become overwhelming. The hippocampus, linked to memory and learning, can actually shrink under long-term depression. This makes it harder to form new positive memories, trapping people in cycles of remembering only the negative. These changes don't mean you are broken. They mean your brain is adapting to prolonged stress, often in ways that backfire. But the key takeaway is this: depression is not all in your head. It is measurable, observable, and real. Stress and cortisol. Another hidden factor is cortisol, the stress hormone. Normally, cortisol rises when you face a challenge, helping you respond. But in chronic depression, cortisol levels remain elevated for long periods. What does that do? It wears down the body, it disrupts sleep, it weakens the immune system. It makes you feel constantly on edge, even when nothing is happening. This is why depression is not just an emotional condition, it is physical. Your body feels heavy, your limbs ache. Even resting doesn't restore you, because the stress chemicals keep firing, draining you from the inside out. Sleep and fatigue. And then there's sleep. Depression and sleep have a vicious relationship. For some, it means insomnia, lying awake at night, thoughts racing endlessly. For others, it means hypersomnia, sleeping for 12 hours and still waking up exhausted. Either way, the cycle deepens. Lack of quality sleep makes depression worse. Depression disrupts sleep further. Round and round it goes. Have you ever noticed how, when you're depressed, even waking up feels painful? That's not laziness. That's your brain chemistry and sleep cycles being hijacked. Why this matters. So why spend all this time on the science? Because it proves something vital. Depression is not a character flaw. It is not weakness. It is not laziness. It is not a failure of willpower. It is a condition that changes your brain, your body, your chemistry, your sleep, your energy. And because it is real, it requires real understanding and real approaches to healing. When you grasp this, something shifts. You stop blaming yourself. You stop asking, why can't I just snap out of it? And instead, you begin to see depression for what it is, a complex, multidimensional illness that requires patience, compassion, and often support to overcome. And that shift is powerful, because self-blame is one of depression's sharpest weapons. The moment you realize, this is not my fault, that weapon loses some of its edge. But if depression is not just personal, if it also has roots in our environment, then we need to ask, why is it that in our modern world, with all our technology, comfort and knowledge, depression seems more widespread than ever? That's what we'll explore next. And if you've been nodding along, if you've felt that exhaustion, that heaviness, that guilt, I want to remind you, you are not broken, and you don't have to go through this journey alone. Subscribe and join a community where we talk about what others ignore, where we shine light on the things that thrive in silence. Now, let's step out of the brain and into society itself. Because the world we live in might be one of the biggest reasons depression has become the silent epidemic of our time. On paper, our world has never been more comfortable. We live in heated homes. We have technology that connects us instantly to anyone across the planet. We carry in our pockets access to all the knowledge humanity has ever recorded. If survival was once our greatest struggle, comfort is now our greatest achievement. And yet, paradoxically, we are more anxious, more restless, and more depressed than ever before. How is that possible? The truth is that while our material lives have improved, the architecture of our society has created new kinds of suffering, silent, invisible, and deeply corrosive. The mirror of social media. Every day, we open our phones and are greeted by a parade of perfection. Flawless bodies, perfectly curated vacations, smiling couples, successful entrepreneurs, friends who seem endlessly happy. And in this endless scroll, there is an unspoken message. Look at them. Look at what they have. Why don't you feel this way? Why aren't you enough? We forget that these are highlights, carefully edited fragments, No one posts their loneliness at midnight or their silent tears in the shower. No one photographs their emptiness. And yet, comparing our raw reality to someone else's staged perfection, we always come up short. This is one of depression's strongest triggers, the sense that everyone else is living while you are merely surviving. Think about it. You may have woken up today feeling heavy, struggling to even get out of bed. And in that same moment, you opened your phone and saw someone halfway across the world on a beach, holding a cocktail, smiling effortlessly. Your mind whispers, "They are happy, I am not, I am failing." And the spiral deepens, the culture of comparison. But it isn't just social media, it's the culture we live in. From an early age, we are told that worth is measured by achievement. Good grades, the right career, financial success, beauty, relationships, constant productivity. You are never simply enough. You are always compared, always measured, always told there is another milestone waiting. And when you cannot keep up, society does not pause to comfort you. It whispers, "You are behind, you are weak, you are losing." This endless comparison doesn't inspire us, it crushes us, and depression thrives in that silent gap between who you are and who you think you should be. Liquid modernity, a world without anchors. Sociologist Zygmunt Bauman described our era as liquid modernity. What he meant is that nothing in our lives feels stable anymore. Jobs disappear overnight, relationships dissolve, values shift, technology changes faster than we can adapt. Everything is transient, everything is uncertain. In the past, your job might have lasted a lifetime. Your community may have been steady. Traditions gave you a sense of belonging. But in our liquid age, everything slips through your fingers. And when nothing is solid, how can you feel secure? How can you rest? You're always chasing the next thing, the next achievement, the next upgrade, the next version of yourself that will finally be good enough. But as soon as you arrive, the goalpost moves. There is always more to chase, and the more you chase, the emptier you feel. Depression loves this environment. It thrives in instability, in comparison, in the endless dissatisfaction that fuels our economy but empties our souls. Disconnection in the age of connection. And here is perhaps the cruelest irony. We are the most connected generation in history, yet so many of us feel utterly alone. We have hundreds of friends online, yet no one to call when we're in pain. We send emojis and hearts, but our real hearts remain silent. We scroll endlessly to escape loneliness, but the scrolling only makes it worse. In truth, our world disconnects us not only from others, but from ourselves. Constant noise, constant distraction, constant obligations. When do we stop and listen to what we actually feel? And then, when the noise finally stops, when the screen is off, what do we find? An emptiness so terrifying that we reach for distraction again. Why this matters? So when we ask, why is depression so common today? Part of the answer lies here. In a society built on comparison, instability, and distraction, it is not just your mind failing you, it is the world around you shaping a reality that breeds despair. But here's a thought. What if depression in this modern age is not just illness, but also rebellion? What if it is your soul's refusal to keep running on the treadmill of endless dissatisfaction? What if, beneath the pain, depression is trying to force you to stop, to look inward, and to finally question what really matters? That brings us to the next layer, understanding depression not just as suffering, but as a signal, a message from within, calling you to change. But before we continue, let me pause here. If these words resonate, if you felt that silent pressure of comparison, that exhaustion of trying to keep up, I want to invite you. Subscribe. Not because I want you to consume more content, but because I want you to have a space where we strip away the illusions, where we face reality honestly, and where you can feel less alone in this struggle. Now, let's move into a radical reframe. What if depression is not only an enemy to escape, but a messenger with something vital to tell you? Depression is heavy. It is dark. It convinces you that it is permanent, that it defines who you are. But remember this, depression is not you. It may cover you like a cloud, but the sun, your true self, is still there, waiting to shine through. You are not your sadness. You are not your exhaustion. You are not your darkest thoughts. You are more, much more. And the very fact that you are here, listening to these words, proves something important. There is still a part of you that has not given up. That part of you is strong, even if it feels small. Hold on to it, nurture it, because from the smallest spark, light can grow. If this video spoke to you, if you found even a little comfort or clarity, I ask one thing: don't keep it to yourself. Like this video so others can find it too. And subscribe to the channel, not just to watch, but to join a community where you are not alone. Here, we go deeper. Here, we face the truths most people avoid. And here, step by step, we find our way forward together. So take a breath. Take one small step today. And remember, you are not your depression. You are the one who will rise beyond it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.